Welcome to the Inter-Regional Debates of the Great Debaters Contest. I am Mariam Bishar.
I am Austin Nyimbok.
The Nile can easily be said to be Africa's greatest resource, but does that mean that the treaties that have been set to govern the use of its waters are punitive and may need to be renegotiated?
Proposing the motion, we have Alliance High School, a school that has claimed that they are here to find solutions and not make differences. Opposing the motion, we have Nyeri High School, who have claimed and have informed their opponents that they should expect the unexpected. So may the debates begin.
The motion this week is: the treaties governing the Nile waters are punitive on certain states and should be renegotiated. Proposing the motion, Alliance High School. Opposing the motion, Nyeri High School. Each contestant has 3 minutes to make their submissions. The audience also gets a chance to put their questions to each team. Each side will have an additional 1 minute to make a final statement. The judge's decision is final. The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.
The first proposer, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Vidal Mwangi, and today we ask a simple question. Who owns the Nile and by what right? A treaty was signed in 1959 between Egypt and Sudan. What will be termed by Egyptians as historical rights. And today we want this treaty renegotiated because these historic rights are recurring fanfare by Egyptians are actually historic wrongs. Work with me here. 84 billion cubic meters of water available for exploitation. 55.5 billion cubic meters was allocated to Egypt. 18.5 billion cubic meters was allocated for Sudan. 10 billion cubic meters was left for evaporation losses. This means other riparian states, 7 of them, were left with only droplets of water to survive on. This means this agreement is punitive, a punishment to other riparian states. Riparian states are states that are bordering the banks of a river. This agreement was irrational, it was unfair, and provocative even. And an insult to the national pride of countries such as Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Eritrea, Burundi, DR Congo. Renegotiating the treaty actually is a benefit, or is about caring about Egypt. Because according to Article 34 of the Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties, 1969, a treaty does not create obligations or rights for a third party without its own consent. And hence, what Egypt is holding is actually a nominal doctrine. That is just the opinion of few individuals which has no legal base. Solutions. We have the Nile Basin Initiative, which states that all the riparian states, can tap this water without significantly impacting on the volume of water allocated to Egypt. That is fair. Or water being stored at Ethiopia, which is much cooler than Egypt, and hence the 10 billion cubic meters being lost for evaporation can be divided among other riparian states without impacting on the allocation of water on Egypt. We can control flooding, and this will increase the water volumes for Egypt. Bertolt Brecht, a famous director, said, "Give the valley to those who can make potential maximum use of it." Thank you.
first opposer, you have 3 minutes to give your opening statement.
The Greek poet Homer once stated that a string can be equated to life, but if fate cut this string, well, Hades waits affront. Well, my name is Edwin Mushai from the Nyeri High School, opposing this motion that states the treaty governing the Nile waters is punitive to certain states and should be renegotiated. Well, the first proposer forgot to mention something, that the Nile Basin Initiative is still under the treaty. Well, Professor J. Cumming of the Elliott International School for Affairs once stated that Egypt should be consulted over projects for the Nile. Well, they want to purport that Egypt has been a selfish man withholding his loaf. Well, the other states, the riparian countries, that is Ethiopia, Sudan, DRC Congo, just to name a few, have never asked for a share of this loaf. And for them that have asked, have been provided. For example, Uganda plans to start a hydroelectric power dam in Jinja. It is proposed. Yes, it will supply power to Uganda. At the same time, it will supply power to Kenya. And the water source that reaches to Egypt will be untouched. Isn't this mutual development? I think so. Yet, our proposers are saying that Egypt has kept its share of the loaf. Well, we have just shown you how the loaf has been divided equally. Fact file, Egypt has a population of 85 million people. 95% of this country depends on one single river for their food and domestic consumption. Likewise, for the Sudan, 77% of the same river for their water and for their food. Well, for these upper riparian states that want to renegotiate the treaty to start projects, we do not say the projects are bad, but look at the haste of renegotiating this treaty. Death by starvation, a crumbling economy. If you look at these other states, they have proper resources, rivers, high rainfall, and fertile grounds. Well, it's an interesting fact to note that Egypt and Sudan are desert countries. What they are saying, they have been selfish. But look, let's look at the greater good. We are talking about consultation. Sit down together for mutual development, my people. And finally, the Nile Basin Initiative was supported by a few countries, Canada, US, the World Bank, and United Nations, which are some also of the international organizations that supported this treaty. Well, Canada hailed it as a chance for African states to equitably share resources. It's like devolution. For example, Turkana, it is a semi-arid area in the north. Isn't it receiving the same share of money that the other counties are receiving? They are, plus extra. Why? It is a hardship area. The same way they made the treaty. Because Egypt is a hardship area, and people need to live. 85 million souls, my people, cannot be wasted just like that. Thank you.
We'll now get rebuttals. We'll start with the proposing team. You have 3 minutes.
Greetings. I would like to start by stating the fact about population. True, we do have 84 million people in Egypt. But by 2025, we'll have 97.3 million people in Egypt. True. Look at all the other Iberian states. By 2025, they shall have a total of 835.9 million people. Now let's factor in climate change. Ethiopia is drying up. Kenya is drying up. The DRC can no longer depend on its rainwater patterns. Neither can Uganda. Sudan is already dry, so it will be drier by that time. And you're saying they cannot tap this water. The Nile Treaty of 1958 gave Egypt the veto power over the Nile. It was simple. It was theirs. They have not agreed to any agreement since then. As a matter of fact, when they were confronted about it and asked, can we construct a dam by Ethiopia, they said, no, we shall turn to military action. As a matter of fact, Hosni Mubarak built an air base near Sudan and was planning on striking Ethiopia the minute they started constructing that dam. The countries here involved, the 7 riparian states, were never involved in the treaty. And as said before, they are not consent or obliged to follow it. Egypt is hampering development. 6,000 megawatts of power to be generated by one dam, the largest in Africa. But they're saying no. And you know what? Ethiopia said, we'll give you 500 megawatts of power for that. They still said no. Egypt is that bully who takes away what the small kid has and decides not to give it back. Are they being selfish? Yes. They are being selfish. As a matter of fact, let's not forget, notice a trend here. The treaty was done in 1929, 1959. 1 year after Egypt had gained independence, 3 years after Sudan had gained independence. They were at their weakest. And yet this treaty still holds up to now. A treaty that was done, we have not factored in the different things that have come in between those 7 years. I'm talking about climate change again. I'm talking about change of governments. I'm talking about the growing population in each of these countries. Yes, Egypt is dependent on the Nile, and we're not taking it away from you. We're not. We're renegotiating it. We want each and every person to benefit from it without any of the riparian states suffering. Because it's punishment when you see a river. Ethiopia has 86% of the river, yet they can't use it. It is punitive not to use a river that is that huge just because of a treaty that was set up by our colonizers. Thank you.
We'll get a rebuttal from the opposers. You have 3 minutes.
Panel of judges and my fellow great debaters, I salute you all. The name is Muthemba Mark Christian from the Nyeri High School, and I am here to oppose this motion. First and foremost, I'd like to counter some of the arguments made by my brothers in green. One, the second opposer, I would like to correct you on something. There are 85 million people in Egypt, not 84. Second thing, aren't the population of Egypt not also growing? Are we expecting that the 85 million will stay stagnant by the end of 2025? I doubt it. I believe also, as much as Ethiopia's population is growing by 4.2%, I don't believe that Egypt is killing people at the same rate. Second, we are okay with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, but have you looked at these effects? If one dynamo collapses in the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, it will cause flooding from its point all the way to Juba. Now, if you check your maps correctly, that's a very long distance. Secondly, check your history right. The 1999 Entebbe Treaty was in full support of the 1929 and 1959 treaties. And I believe you believe in the adage that says, old is gold. Well, upstream states have adequate natural resources. For example, the Ethiopian highlands have fertile grounds and adequate rainfall of 1,800 millimeters every year, as compared to Egypt's mere 180 millimeters of water. Now, Owen Falls in Uganda provides water for hydroelectric power generation to be used in their homes and in their industries. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we take away this precious resource from them, aren't we going to bring about adverse effects on their economy? Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Kandie, a PhD holder, in his paper, Egypt and the Hydropolitics of the Blue Nile River, states that a few years back, the Aswan High Dam's water levels decreased, and this caused a major effect. This affected their agricultural and industrial output. They had to deplete their foreign exchange reserves. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the use of building up economies at the expense of other countries' economies? Ladies and gentlemen, changing or renegotiating these treaties is like taking away the walking aid of a blind man in the streets of Nairobi, expecting the blind man to see, and giving it to a normal healthy person like you and me, expecting that we will improve our vision. Ladies and gentlemen, I am opposing this motion that the treaty governing the Nile is punitive to certain states and should be renegotiated. I oppose it. So join us, my brothers in green, join us as we oppose this motion. Think of Egypt, think of the 85 million people in this country. I rest my case. Thank you.
May we have questions for the proposers?
I'd like to ask a question to the proposers. You're saying that these riparian upstreams should be given the share. Why should they be given the share of the Nile equally? Yet they have other multiple resources that have not even maximally used.
Okay, I'm Sheka from Olympic High School. Now, the first proposer said that the treaty is unfair to countries like Burundi and Eritrea. Now, what is the relationship between the Nile and Burundi or Eritrea? Thank you.
My name is David Yuri from Thika High School, and I would like to ask, you've stated that the treaty was signed in 1959 and 1929, but Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania had not gained their independence. So, should they suffer at the cost of countries which had gained their independence and not chosen their own will on the River Nile?
May we have the third proposer to answer the questions?
Thank you very much for your questions. They were in fact very good. And the first question was on why isn't Kenya using all its resources, and Uganda and Tanzania and the like. One, as it was said, our population is growing much faster than Egypt's. In Egypt, in 2025, there shall be 97 million. In Ethiopia, there shall be in excess of 100 million, as per Wikipedia projections. The second question was the relationship of countries such as Burundi and Eritrea in the Nile. You find that some sources of rivers that drain into Lake Victoria and Lake Tana actually do begin from Eritrea and Burundi. So I hope I've made that clear. The reason we are here today is because at some point, at some time, and somewhere, someone made decisions that have gotten us to debate about this topic. And those were bad decisions. When? In 1959. By who? By the then Sudanese president, Ibrahim Aboud, who had just come, in fact, from overthrowing the previous government. He was confused. He needed a friend. And what did Egypt do? They come and they offer at their weakest point, because Egypt knows that they can manipulate Sudan. And what do? They trick them. They give them 18%. They give themselves in excess of over 50%. And they blatantly say that Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Burundi are non-existent. It is reason and not passion that guides us on our deliberations and our decisions. In the year 2010 in Entebbe, members of reasonable countries came together to form an agreement. The other riparian states. And Egypt, by the way, Egypt blatantly rejected that claim and said that they will not compromise. If Egypt wanted to compromise, then they wouldn't have built an airbase right at Sudan. They wouldn't be willing to use military force. Now, let me ask you, are we planning to risk the lives of nearly 1 billion people in the next 10 or 15 years? I'm talking World War III. I'm talking massive deaths, more than the deaths that we experienced in World War II. Are we willing to risk that? Do we want peace? Because if we do not renegotiate this treaty, we shall have military war. We shall have hunger in Egypt, hunger in Ethiopia. We shall have revolt everywhere. I ask again, who really owns the Nile? It's not Egypt, it's not Kenya, it's not Uganda. It is all of us, and we can share it equally. Thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to the audience.
Egypt's agricultural domestic production relies on 80% of the water from the Nile. Now, look at the Grand Renaissance Dam. What my fellow opposer failed to mention was that it will cut off 20% of the water flowing to Egypt, which means in time there will be no water in Egypt. And interesting to note is that despite having the Nile, Egypt is the world's largest grain importer, according to Future Directions International. Now tell me, we minus their domestic production. How higher up the importation table do you expect them to go? Possibly zero? Don't think so. Failed to mention my name. Maura Ambrose Gishomo from the Nyeri High School, ready to oppose this motion. And I'll go straight to the question that was posed. You asked me that if Kenya and Uganda were not part of the treaty when it was being signed, then why should they be forced to follow that treaty? I'm going to tell you this simple thing. Go to Google. There's something called the Nile Basin Initiative, which was signed in 1999. And all these countries, including Kenya and Uganda, they all agreed to that motion. They all agreed to sign that treaty. So they should not complain because they signed that treaty before. Again, today, I'm a very, very annoyed man. My fellow proposer here mentioned the fact that if this treaty is not renegotiated, there's going to be war. There's something you failed to realize. Do you know that hunger can actually cause war? I'm going to take you back to a scenario in Kenya, our own land. Do you all remember Migingo Island? We had the Kenyans and Ugandans fighting. Do you know what they were fighting over? Omena. What is omena? Mere fish. And they fought. And they caused quite a scuffle. And there were less than 500 people. Now go to Egypt. We have over 85 million people. And we are telling them that we are going to cut off their water, meaning we cut off their food. Do you want to tell me that these people are not going to fight? Of course they are going to fight. And you know, an hungry man is an angry man. And there's nothing we are going to be able to do about it because we caused this situation. And then again, you've mentioned various solutions that you want us. I mean, you've mentioned the fact that this treaty is not fair to other countries. Now I'm going to ask you, what do you think about a spoiled child? A spoiled child is a person who is known to ask for more and more and more resources. Look at Ethiopia. They have the Ethiopian highlands. Kenya ourselves, we have the Kenya highlands. And then now we want to go to Egypt, which has only the Nile water to depend on. We want to go to them and tell them, no, we have to share things 50-50. Let me tell you, this is not nusu mkate. This is not half loaf. We have to consider other factors. We have to consider the fact that Egypt has only the Nile to depend on. So if maybe you think I'm complaining, I'm going to tell you a simple solution. Let these countries use their other resources. Because as United Nations projected, by 2025, the water running to Egypt will be lower. So are you telling me by building these resources and reducing their water flow, we want to hasten their due date? I think it's not fair. Look at Egypt. Look at that crying child. Pity her. Thank you.
We'll now listen to closing statements. The proposing team, you may begin. You have a minute.
I think it's time we lower our voices and improve on our facts. We are not trying to snatch Egypt or the River Nile from Egypt. Rather, we are trying to simply divide each and all of the resources equally among all nations. Now, my fellow citizens of this great country, but outside referred to as non-existent, will we continue to conform to partial decisions? Will we continue to be misled? Will we continue to give up our birthright? Will neocolonialism stay in this place? My fellow Kenyans, is this how far we have stooped? Is this how low we can go? That we give up our birthright? Thank you.
Opposers, you also have a minute.
Well, with me, I have an empty water bottle. Yes, from Egypt. An Egypt where unwarranted and unchecked projects on the Nile, which will deplete our water source, will lead to this. So what do you want me to do or to tell a half-starved and probably dehydrated Egyptian man to do with this bottle? To eat it? I think not. What we as the opposers are not saying, we are not saying that the projects are bad. In fact, they are very good. They'll help us. But look at the mere repercussions of what we'll have. Instead of helping people, you'll help yourselves while kill others at the process. We are talking about consultation. Already the treaty has provided a platform for negotiations to take place. What else do we want? It is the upper riparian countries that have failed to take stock of the treaty. They have failed the treaty, but the treaty has not failed us, proposers. Thank you.
both teams, have demonstrated that they spent time, researching and finding information as concerns the treaties that govern the Nile waters. To Alliance High, Vidal, Mwangi, Waigwa, Kenneth, great performance. To Nyeri High, Edwin Mushai, Mark Christian, and Ambrose, great performance. All the best.
The motion was a complex one, and the fact that you demonstrated research, as my colleague has put it across, I want to say that you did your best. I am proud of you. I have learnt a lot personally, and I think you're some of the best debaters we have. All the best to the two teams.
It was quite a heavy motion that required a lot of research and a lot of reading. Personally, I have not read much about the treaty, and therefore I was a student being taught by you. Everything that you said, I was actually absorbing as the truth. Possibly, I'll go and read later on. Alliance High, comprising of 3 gentlemen who are very strong. Nyeri High, comprising of 3 gentlemen who are very strong.
The judges awarded Alliance High School 74%. Give them a round of applause. In a strange twist, Nyeri High School was also awarded 74%. And therefore, they are both the winners of this debate. A greater round of applause, please.
Wonderful job indeed. Whenever we see a tie, it's a testament to the level of debate. It means there's 6 wonderful young men standing beside me. We thank them for what they've given us today. They've educated us, and we hope to see you next time from the Great Debaters Contest. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Thank you for watching.
The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together, they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.